Moadim l'simcha. The Torah in Sefer Devarim, Perek Tet Zayin, describes matzah as lechem oni, literally the bread of affliction. The Gemara in Pesachim gives two different drashot, two different homiletic explanations of what does it mean lechem oni. The first is that it's lechem she'onim alav devarim harbe, bread that we say a lot of things over it, meaning it's before us at the Seder. An alternative explanation is, since it's written without the vav, it can be read lechem ani. Lechem and ani as in a poor person, not bread of affliction, but a bread of a poor person. And we say ma ani darko beprusa afkan beprusa, that just like a poor person only has a piece of bread, not a whole loaf, so too we have a broken piece of matzah. And this, of course, is behind the custom that we have of yachatz, of breaking the matzah. And when we recite halach ma'anya, which is just an Aramaic version of lechem oni, we say this is the bread our forefathers ate as slaves. This is slave rations we're eating. We're holding up the broken piece of bread like an ani would have, like only part of the piece, not the whole loaf. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs in his Haggadah makes an interesting observation. We take the other half of this broken piece and we put it away to be used later for the afikomen. And many meforshim have noted that the symbolism of matzah changes from the beginning of the Seder, where we're focused on it as the bread of affliction or the bread of a poor person, lechem oni, to the section in the middle where Rabbi Gamliel says matzah, which was baked in great haste, represents the hurried nature of redemption. And then, of course, this other half of this piece, that half of it is our lechem oni, the other becomes the afikomen, which is symbolically in place of the Korban Pesach, the ultimate symbol of redemption at our Seder. And Rabbi Sachs asks an interesting question. I'm going to share his question, but not his answer. His question is, how do we get from it being the bread of affliction, lechem oni, or the bread of a poor person, or the slave rations at the beginning of the Seder, to the bread of redemption in the middle of the Seder? And I think perhaps the way we get there is through these two drashot. On one hand, it's lechem of ani. It's a broken piece. We acknowledge all that we are lacking. But it's also lechem she'onim alav devarim harbe, that we speak a lot about it, that we process that loss, we process all that has happened to us in order to prepare ourselves, in order to move from the place of being an ani to being the place of a redeemed person. And that requires speech, that requires talking about what has happened. And I think these two elements are central for us as we prepare for Yizkor on the last day of Pesach. Pesach this year, I think, has a sort of, at least to me, a symbolic quality of coming upon one full calendar year of dealing with this terrible pandemic caused by COVID-19. And when we think about that in this country alone, there's 500,000 people or more who have passed away, and all those Jews in Israel and people around the world, millions of people. And we think about that for every person who's passed away, there's approximately 10 people deeply mourning that person. So just in this country, 5 million people deeply impacted by that loss. Around the world, millions more. And we think about all the great sages and great people we have lost this past year. It is really very humbling. And the way that we, I think, mark Yizkor this year personally, communally, is we recognize the broken piece of matzah. We recognize that we are aniyim, that we are broken. And at the same time, in order to heal, in order to move from the broken place, to move to the place of redemption, requires speaking about it. It requires being the drasha of bread, that you speak a lot about it, anim adrim harbe, and that we acknowledge and we talk about all that we've lost as individuals, both this past year and, of course, in an individual sense, all of the loved ones that we've lost in previous years, but also in a communal sense, in a world sense, of all of the loss that has happened, that we need to acknowledge this properly at this 1 year mark. In order to be able to move forward, it's incredibly crucial to mourn, to speak about, to talk about, to acknowledge the pain of all of these losses. And I wish everyone a wonderful last 2 days of Yantif, a Chag Sameach, and that may we have a year that we go from Yagon, from suffering to Simcha, from Choshech, from darkness, L'or Gadol, from darkness to great light. Chag Sameach, everyone.